begins not with silence but with a hum, a low, endless vibration that feels like the earth itself is breathing. You stand at the edge of a vast silver desert, dunes stretching as far as the eye can see, shining faintly beneath a moon so full it seems to hold its breath. The air is cool, almost weightless. Each grain of sand glints like powdered glass, and somewhere far off, something gleams at the horizon. A tower, tall and narrow, reaching into the stars like a question that's waited too long to be answered. That is where you're going. The observatory, at the edge of the world. It's said that the man who lives there hasn't spoken to another soul in 100 years. An astronomer who watches the sky not for discovery, but for forgiveness. You don't know why you're drawn to him, only that something inside you recognized the invitation before you even read it. The letter had arrived without a stamp, without a sender, folded into your pillow one morning. If the noise has become too loud, come when the stars are awake. So now you walk, slow, barefoot, the sand cool beneath your feet. Above you, constellations shimmer in impossible clarity. Orion, Lyra, Cassiopeia, each one pulsing like a heartbeat. The sound of your steps blends with the soft rush of wind over dunes. Every breath feels lighter, every thought further away. You walk for what feels like both an hour and a lifetime, until the tower finally rises in full before you. A spire of white stone coiled by a spiral stair that wraps it like a ribbon of bone. At its peak glints a brass dome, open to the night, a telescope jutting toward infinity. At the base, a door of dark oak stands ajar, as though it's been waiting just for you. When you step inside, the air shifts, cooler, still. The scent of dust, parchment, and oil greets you like memory. Candles flicker along the walls, their flames so still they look painted. You close the door behind you, and the world outside dissolves into silence. The staircase begins to climb. It's narrow, coiling tightly, each step creaking underfoot. As you ascend, the sound of the world fades further, replaced by a rhythm. The faint tick of gears somewhere above, the echo of your own breath, and the distant turning of the great telescope, like the planet itself exhaling. You pass shelves built into the stone, filled with books that hum faintly, as if alive. You glimpse titles written in languages you can't recognize. Some spines glow faintly, others whisper, the pages breathing when you pass. After what feels like an eternity, a warm light spills down from above. Amber, and steady. You reach a landing where the stair opens into a circular chamber, lined with maps of stars. And there he stands, the astronomer, old but not fragile, his hair long and white as starlight, his eyes pale and patient. He wears a robe the colour of midnight clouds. When he speaks, his voice is low, soft, with the slow resonance of someone who hasn't rushed a word in centuries. You came, he says simply. Few make it this far. Fewer stay. You try to answer, but your throat catches. He gestures to a chair beside a wide brass telescope. It points through an open window into the vastness of the night. The stars there are brighter, closer, almost breathing. Sit, he says gently. You've carried too much noise to speak yet. You do as he says. The chair is worn but warm, and when you rest against it, something in your body, something that's been clenched for years, begins to release. The astronomer turns a brass wheel. The telescope groans softly as it tilts toward a cluster of stars that look like spilled diamonds. He looks through the lens, then steps aside. Look, he murmurs. Tell me what you see. You lean forward. At first, nothing, just points of light. Then, slowly, they begin to move. You realize the stars aren't still. They're drifting, gently, in slow spirals, each one pulsing like a heartbeat, each one whispering, tiny murmurs, faint as the sound of sand falling, voices, countless, layered, human, whispering things you've thought 1,000 times. What if I'm not enough? What if I never change? What if they forget me? You pull back, startled. The astronomer nods knowingly. Ah, he says softly. You're seeing your sky. He turns the wheel again, adjusting the focus. Each star represents a thought someone has released. But yours, he glances toward the lens. Yours haven't let go yet. He smiles, not unkindly. Would you like to learn how? You nod. Man. The word yes barely escapes your lips before he's already walking toward a massive wall chart. A map of the heavens, drawn entirely in silver ink. The mind, he says, tracing a finger along a constellation, is an observatory of its own. Thoughts are stars, endless, bright and burning, but not all are meant to be kept. Some exist only to pass. He moves to a lever beside the telescope and pulls it slowly. A panel in the ceiling slides open, revealing a sky so vast it takes your breath. The stars gleam as if close enough to touch. The moon hangs low, golden and heavy, like an unblinking eye. The astronomer speaks again, softer now, voice blending with the night air. For every thought that hurts, he says, there is a star that waits to fall. He hands you a small brass key, engraved with symbols that seem to shift in the candlelight. This unlocks a release mechanism. Every time you exhale, one star will dim. Every time you forgive yourself for something small, another will fade. Peacefully, willingly, he walks toward the far window, his robe brushing the floor like mist. Would you like to begin tonight? You nod again. He gestures to the telescope, then look once more. But this time, don't seek the stars. Seek the spaces between them. You peer through the lens. This time you see not light, but darkness, alive with quiet movement. Shadows breathing in rhythm with you. And in the distance, one faint light flickers, struggling, trembling, waiting. That, says the astronomer, is your first release. You exhale. The star pulses once, then slowly fades into black. The darkness that replaces it isn't frightening. It's soft, warm, infinite. You feel something in your chest mirror it. An old weight dissolving. The astronomer smiles. Good. The sky remembers peace quickly. You close your eyes. The sound of the wind outside has changed. Slower, rounder, as though the entire desert is exhaling with you. Somewhere deep within, you begin to understand that this isn't just an observatory. It's a map of your own letting go. And tonight, you have only just begun to look. The astronomer waits as your breath settles into the slow tide of the tower. Candles pull their light along the stone, the flames barely moving, as if listening. Outside, the desert hushes. A low wind combs the dunes until they gleam like sleeping animals. Good, he murmurs. The first release is always the hardest. The sky grows friendlier after that. He turns a wheel of dark brass. Gears answer with a velvet hum. The telescope's barrel tilts a fraction, and the ceiling aperture opens wider, swallowing more night. Tonight, he says, you will learn 3 constellations, not the ones sailors use, the ones the heart remembers. You lean to the eyepiece. The lens is cool against your brow. A faint ring of light expands, then sharpens, and a new drift of stars appears, delicate, spilt sugar bright. They gather in an elegant pattern, like threads on a loom. The first, he says, is called the remembering. His finger traces its shape on the silver wall map. A crooked arc, then a simple line, then a small circle off to the side. It's a constellation of the thought that repeats because it is afraid to be forgotten. You watch the stars of the remembering flicker in a slow, anxious rhythm, like a bird trapped behind glass. What do I do? You whisper. The astronomer places a small object on the table beside you, a shallow bowl of black glass, filled with water so still it looks solid. When a thought repeats, he says, it is asking to be witnessed, once, fully, and then honoured with rest. Speak the shape of it, no more than a sentence, and breathe it into the bowl. You think of a sentence that has followed you for years, patient, stubborn as a shadow. You say it quietly, almost ashamed of the way it trembles out of you. Each word falls onto the water with no sound at all. The surface ripples. Faint stars appear within the bowl, reflections from the lens above. Now exhale, he says, longer than you think you should. You do. The room seems to lean with your breath. The reflections on the water blur, then settle. Through the telescope, one of the small stars in the remembering shivers and dims, as if it had been waiting for your permission to grow dark. The astronomer smiles without triumph. You see, witness, and then rest. His voice lowers. Do not fight thoughts. The stone warms in your hand as you speak into it. Not long speeches, just simple labels, honest and small. Mine, not mine. The names move through you like birds crossing a dusk sky. When you are done, you close your fist around the stone and breathe out. Above, one of the scale pan's tips. The heavier cluster spills a little light, scattering 3 bright flecks that fall and fade. The remaining stars steady themselves, calmer, Your shoulders realize they are allowed to settle, and they do. The astronomer watches you without crowding your silence. Balance, he says, is not an achievement. It is a practice of returning. A new wind touches the tower, warmer, carrying a faint scent of metal and rain that has no cloud to belong to. He tilts his head, listening to something far beyond your hearing. The desert forgives quickly, he says, almost to himself. This is a good night. He turns the final wheel and locks it with a soft click. The third constellation is rare. People think it is a tragedy, but it's not. He gestures for you to look. In the lens, a gentle curve of stars arcs like a smile that doesn't know if it's allowed to be one. From its midpoint extends a thin line, a bridge, reaching toward a single solitary star that burns a little apart from the others. This is the crossing, he says. It appears when you approach the truth you've postponed. You swanner. The solitary star feels familiar in the way a door feels familiar when you've avoided it. What is the practice for it? Kindness, he says simply. Nothing else works. He places your hand over your chest. Here. Warm the truth from the inside. Not to change it, to welcome it. You close your eyes, hand to your breastbone, and let your palm be a small hearth. It takes time. 2, 3, 4 breaths before the warmth arrives. Patient and even. When you open your eyes, the solitary star of the crossing flickers, then glides a finger width closer to the arc. Not all the way, just enough to be less alone. The astronomer nods, satisfied. Truth doesn't need to arrive tonight, he says. It only needs to know the way. You withdraw from the eyepiece. The room feels larger now, as if the walls had stepped back to make space for what you put down. The astronomer sets a teapot on a slender iron ring above a candle. Its small flame doesn't waver. Steam gathers, becomes fragrant, something like cardamom and winter orange. As he pours, he speaks without looking at you. When I first built this tower, he says, I tried to pin the heavens to paper. Every night I chased perfection across the sky and slept in the wreckage of my own expectations. He hands you a cup. Then the sky taught me to look between the stars. You cradle the cup. The heat is modest, precise. It doesn't burn. What changed? You ask. He considers the steam. I stopped asking the sky to answer me, he says, and began letting it ask better questions. You drink. The tea is gentle and oddly familiar, as if you've tasted it in a memory you forgot to have. The tower settles again. Something clicks in the gears above. A punctual, satisfied sound. And then there is only the small music of heat and breath. Will the constellations return, you ask? They always do, he says. But when they return, they will find you changed. He smiles like someone who enjoys being incorrect, only if it teaches him something. Shall we make a practice of it? 3 releases each night. No more. The mind needs rest as much as it needs relief. You nod. The rule feels merciful. He lifts the bowl of black glass. The water is clear again, as if no sentence ever touched it. Walk with me, he says. He leads you along the circular room to an alcove, where an enormous clock sits without hands. Its face is a carved disc of dark wood, its numerals replaced by small inlaid stones that glow faintly. Dawn, noon, dusk, midnight, and 8 other unnamed thresholds. Time, he says, behaves differently up here. I keep only the hours that help. He turns the dial to a point between dusk and midnight. The tower responds with a slow breath that seems to come from the stone itself. Now, he says, we take your sky out under the real one. He unlatches a low door you hadn't noticed. It opens to a narrow balcony girdling the tower. The night greets you. Wide, intimate, alive. Below the desert is a dark ocean. Above, the constellations shine like patient cities. The astronomer leans on the rail, his robe quiet as shadow. Tell me something, he says. Who invited you here? You blink, surprised. You did. He smiles at the horizon. Did I? He looks at you now, a star caught in each eye. Look more carefully. You search your memory for the letter. Its neat, unassuming script. The absence of a name. The gentle command to come when the stars are awake. You realize you never wondered how it found you, only why it felt like relief. It sounded, you say slowly, like something I would write to myself if I were kinder. He says, pleased. Then perhaps you did. You let the idea stand without trying to wrestle it into sense. The balcony wind combs your hair in slow strokes. Somewhere far below, sand shifts like a sleeping creature, turning in a dream. Tonight we won't climb farther, he says. You've already moved more sky than most do in a month. He straightens, and for a second his age lifts from him like a cloak. Before we go in, I have a simple lesson. He reaches into the pocket of his robe and brings out a thin, curved shard of glass, smoothed by time. The kind that might once have been a bottle's lip. He places it against the rail so that it catches starlight and paints a pale arc on the stone. The mind, he says, is a lens. If you hold it too close, it burns. If you place it just right, it reveals. The shard glows. A small bow of light trembles on the floor, then steadies. Every practice we do here, he says, is just a way of moving the lens. Nothing more. You nod. The lesson lands somewhere useful without needing a shelf. He pockets a glass and opens a balcony door. Inside, the tower is warmer by a shade. The candle's halo's wider. The air heavier with the comforting fatigue of honest work. Rest, he says, is the last release of any night. He gestures toward a low cot tucked beneath a window, where the sky is framed like a painting. You may sleep while the stars keep watch. You lie down. The mattress is thin but forgiving. The pillow smells faintly of old pages and sunlight. He dims the lamps one by one, until the room is an island of shadow threaded with silver. At the door, he pauses, not looking back. 3 releases, he reminds you gently. No heroics. This place rewards kindness. His footsteps recede along the curve of the wall. You listen for a while to the clock with no hands, to the wind's round breath, to the telescope's patient heart. Somewhere between one thought and the next, a small star you hadn't noticed surrenders its light, and a warm, bearable darkness grows in its place, a space you recognize as your own. Sleep comes the way a tide comes, not all at once, not completely, but with a promise it always keeps. Just before it carries you under, you think you hear the astronomer speaking very softly to himself, almost laughing. Ah, he says, delighted. So that's where you were. The line makes no sense. And then it does. And then even that isn't necessary, because you are already drifting out past the remembering, beyond the wait, onto the bridge of the crossing, where the sky learns your name and is content to say it only once, right before everything becomes quiet enough to be true. Dawn arrives as a rumor. Not a colour, not yet. Just a softening of edges that makes the tower feel newly carved. You wake the way a shoreline wakes, touched by something gentle and inevitable. The window above your cot holds a thin ribbon of pearl sky. The desert below lies perfectly still, as if it remembered how to be an ocean and is deciding to keep the secret. You lie there for a few breaths, listening. The clock without hands hums like a cat asleep. A quiet draught carries a clean smell of stone that has spent the night thinking. Far above, something turns with patience. The great brass telescope, shifting a hair's width as if finishing a sentence. It began in another century. A soft clink, then his voice. "Good morning," the astronomer says, already awake, already unhurried. He stands by a workbench you hadn't properly seen. Drawers upon drawers, each labelled with a symbol that seems to move when you don't look at it. He's polishing a small brass disc with the corner of his sleeve. "How did you sleep?" he asks, the way one asks about a garden, expecting growth, not perfection. "Like something let go of me," you say. He nods. "It did. You did." He gestures toward a shallow basin near the window, where last night's faint ash is settled into a soft crescent. Light leaves traces. So does release. You study the rings, the outermost marked with the tower's 12 nameless thresholds. Dawn, noon, dusk, midnight, and the 8 that live between. The inner ring bears small symbols that look like constellations, sketched by someone who loves music more than geometry. He lifts your hand and places the disc in your palm. It's warm, as if it has already learned you. "Turn the outer ring," he says. "Move from between dusk to almost midnight." You do. The circles whisper. Now the inner ring until it finds you. You pause, unsure what that means, and then a tiny click, soft as a bird landing. A symbol settles beneath the pin, a shape like 2 lines crossing with a small star at their meeting point. He smiles. Conjunction. Today, we'll pair light with light. He leads you to the telescope, already angled toward the west where night lingers. We continue gently, he says. 3 releases, 3 lessons. The first is alignment. He draws a curtain, dimming the room to a tender twilight. The dome aperture narrows, the world concentrating to a single, measured beam. put your eye to the lens, he murmurs. You do. Darkness first, then the familiar grain of distance, then a cluster, not many stars, just 4, close enough to converse. 2 brighter, 2 soft as breath. Slowly, the 2 pairs slide toward one another until touch. For a moment, the 4 feel like one. Then they continue on, changed by having met. Conjunction, he repeats, not collision. Meeting without harm. He waits for the image to settle in you. Find in yourself 2 things that avoid each other, he says. Not enemies, just neighbours who haven't learned to greet. Breathe them into the same room. You close your eyes. On the inhale, you gather them. The part that pushes, the part that pleads. And on the exhale, you invite them to sit. Nothing dramatic happens. No flash, no epiphany. But a tension you didn't know how to name loosens, and something like civility begins. Through the lens, the quartet of stars glows a fraction warmer, as if approving the experiment. You don't need to make them agree, he says, only to let them hear each other. He makes a small, satisfied noise. Good. First lesson complete. He turns a wheel. The telescope glides to a new field. Lesson 2. Aperture. He lifts a hand and with a delicate motion narrows the slit of the dome until the room grows almost dark. Your breath blooms loud in the soft. Instruments don't only magnify, he says, they limit. They refuse too much sky, so the right sky can be seen. Minds must learn this. He invites you to the eyepiece again. Now the view is spare. A single star, large and kind, set against velvet. You can see the subtle pulse of its life, the tiny shimmer at its edges when your own heartbeat brushes the lens. When the world is loud, he says, reduce the opening. Choose less. See more. He waits, letting the practice find its shape. Close your window to what does not feed you. Keep it open to one thing that does. You pick one. The slow rise and fall at your ribs. Everything else is allowed to stand outside, not exiled. simply not invited. You breathe with the star until it steadies you, or perhaps you steady it. The exchange feels mutual. He opens the dome a fraction, enough to return colour to the room. Aperture, he says softly. A boundary written in light. For a while the tower is only breathing and brass. The small scrape of a gear deciding to rest. Then he moves to the wall of maps and touches the silver ink where last night's constellations live. Final lesson for this hour, he says, is parallax. You tilt your head. The way things appear to move when you do. Yes, he is pleased. The star stays. The viewer shifts. Meaning changes. He gestures to the balcony. Come. The desert back inside, he turns the handless clock to a notch between morning and hush. The tower cools like a kettle taken off the boil. Breakfast, he declares, which in the observatory means sliced figs, a heel of bread warmed on the lamp, and water that tastes faintly of stone. While you eat, he opens a narrow drawer labelled with a symbol you recognise from the planisphere. Two tiny arcs facing each other like cupped hands. He removes a velvet-lined case and sets it on the table. Inside, 5 thin prisms of crystal, each a slightly different shape. Triangle, rectangle, lozenge, a long blade, and a small square you could almost mistake for nothing at all. These are lenses, he says, cut for qualities rather than objects. He holds the triangle up to the window. The desert fractures into 3 soft scenes that share a single light. For discernment, he says, placing it in your hand. The rectangle gathers the whole room and gently elongates it, so the spaces between things show themselves. For patience, the lozenge blurs edges while keeping cores intact. For forgiveness, the blade sharpens one thin line, the rim of the cup, making it exact. For decision, and the small square does something you cannot name. The world stays the same, but you feel yourself grow a fraction kinder when you look. That one, he says, noticing your face, is for mercy, the stance from which all true seeing happens. He does not ask you to pick. He asks you to carry the case. Use them as needed. Swap them. Stack them. Look at your life through qualities first. The objects will explain themselves. You tuck the velvet case under your arm and feel absurdly seen. The day passes the way good days in high places do, quickly and not at all. You nap when the stone suggests it. You read a map without understanding it and feel fed anyway. When the light returns to blue, the astronomer relights the candles with a taper he never hurries. Night restores the tower to itself. 3 releases again, he says, and something new. The telescope finds a dim river of stars, a strand stretched across black like a harp string. It hums without sound. Resonance, he says, almost to the instrument. Tonight we tune. He teaches you a quiet trick. To breathe in time with something that cannot hear you, and watch it somehow answer. In, 4, out, 6. The river thickens, or perhaps your willingness does. Either way, it feels like a meeting that neither of you forces. The bowl of black glass accepts a single small sentence and dissolves it. The stone in your palm divides mine from not mine, with less struggle than yesterday. The star of the crossing edges closer to the arc. The distance between them now only the width of a kindness you actually practiced this afternoon, when you could have been clever. Good, he says, and in that single syllable is a whole way of approval, with all the doors open. He turns down the lamps, but not entirely. One more thing, he says, voice lowering, as if speaking near a sleeping animal. Every observatory keeps a mechanism of light, a way to preserve what shouldn't be forgotten, not as ink, but as direction. He slides a panel beneath the telescope's base and reveals a brass dial you could easily have mistaken for decoration. Around its edge are 12 shallow notches. In each notch rests a tiny glass bead, each a different colour of moonlight. These are bearings, he says. If the tower ever went dark, a keeper could set one bead in the centre and know how to turn the dome until the right sky returned. He lifts one bead with tweezers and holds it up. Inside the glass drifts a thread of silver, like a hair trapped in amber. Each bearing holds a practice, he says. Not words, direction. Choose 3. Not now. When your hands know. He returns the bead, slides the panel closed, and for the first time since you arrived, looks a little uncertain. Like a man deciding whether to speak a grief or keep it for his pillow. You wait. The tower At the end of your stay, he says at last, I will ask you to take one bearing with you. The tower will keep turning without it. You will not. You open your mouth to answer, but a sound interrupts. Soft, distant, unmistakable. Footsteps on stone. Not yours. Not his. They ascend somewhere below. Unhurried. As if the tower had grown a second staircase and was trying it on. The astronomer tilts his head, listening with that particular kindness he gives the sky. Ah, he says, and a smile you have not seen touches the corner of his mouth. Something like recognition bending around surprise. Right on time. He turns to you, eyes bright with a joy that seems to know more than it says. Tomorrow, he murmurs, we'll climb higher. Bring the mercy lens. The footsteps pause beneath the room. The clock without hands gives one contented tick, though no one touched it. You're wont to rest, he says, already dimming the lamps. You lie down, the velvet case of lenses safe beside you, the planisphere warm against your palm. Sleep gathers quickly, like a cloak laid over your shoulders, by someone who knows your weight exactly. Just as the tower slips away, you hear the door on the level below open. A breath of cooler night rising through the stone. And a voice, almost your own, says softly, Hello. I got your letter. The words ripple through the dome, like a star falling when no one expects it. You drift into the dark between constellations, where surprises wait without hurrying, and the desert breathes like a companion who knows you well. You wake before dawn, that fragile hour when the darkness hasn't yet decided whether to stay or go. The air in the observatory feels different, alive, as though someone has quietly shifted the furniture of the universe while you slept. The clock without hands hums faintly. The telescope stands angled east, a thin shimmer of early light tracing its brass rim. You sit up slowly, listening. There. Footsteps again. Soft, deliberate, but lighter than the astronomer's. When you turn, you see a silhouette standing by the balcony door. It's the same height as you, the same shape. And when it turns, your breath catches. It's your face, reflected back, only calmer. The visitor smiles, as if they've been waiting centuries for you to notice. Don't be afraid, they say, in your own voice. Not identical, but gentler, deeper, as if worn smooth by understanding. I'm not a ghost. I'm just what you've already become. Before you can speak, the astronomer steps from the shadows. He isn't surprised. Good, he says softly. The reflection found you. That means the tower has completed its turn. He gestures toward the two of you. Meet yourself. Properly this time. The other you tilts their head, studying you with quiet amusement. You've been carrying my half, they say. The part that looks forward, while I've been holding the part that looks back. They step closer, light from the dome softening their edges until they almost glow. It's time we shared the same sky. The astronomer begins to adjust the telescope, his voice a calm current beneath the moment. When the observatory aligns with both moons, the outer and the inner, its mirrors awaken. He looks at you. You're standing in that alignment now. What you do next will decide what stays in orbit and what falls into peace. You glance between him and your reflection. What am I supposed to do? He smiles. Nothing dramatic. Just listen. You've both been speaking over each other for years. The reflection steps closer until your shadows overlap on the floor. They speak first. I watched you run from everything that reminded you of me. You filled every silence with motion so you wouldn't hear the truth. That stillness isn't punishment. It's home. Their words hit softly, like snow landing on water. You swallow, then answer quietly. And you hid behind calm, so you wouldn't have to feel what hurt. You called it peace, but it was distance. They nod. You're right. The astronomer's hands rest on the telescope's controls, but he doesn't intervene. This is parallax again, he says. But this time, the two eyes belong to one soul. You and your reflection both laugh. Quietly, the same breath, at the truth of it. Then, at the same moment, you both inhale. The air between you glows faintly, like dust catching moonlight. Now, the astronomer murmurs, let the tower show you what wholeness looks like. He turns the wheel. The dome opens wide, wider than before, revealing a sky unlike any you've seen. It isn't black. It's deep violet, threaded with rivers of silver light that drift like liquid stars. Each river moves in rhythm with your breath, as if the night itself has joined the meditation. This, the astronomer says, is the mirror sky, the final layer of the observatory. It reflects not the world as it is, but as it heals. You step forward. Your reflection steps with you, perfectly in sync. When you reach the telescope, you look through together. At first you see the familiar constellations. You frown. What do you mean? The observatory isn't a destination, they say. It's a bridge. They take your hand, warm, steady, real. Every person who climbs it eventually becomes the astronomer for someone else. You glance at the old man. He's watching the two of you with that same half smile, the look of someone witnessing a story reach the chapter he's been waiting for. Is that what happened to you? You ask him. He chuckles softly. You already know the answer. The reflection's grip tightens, grounding you. I have to go, they say. You're ready now. The words sting in a way that feels right, like a healed scar pulling for the last time. Where? Into you, they say simply, where I belonged all along. They step forward, slowly, until the light from the telescope wraps around you both like a halo. For a heartbeat, you feel everything. Your past, your gentleness, your fear, your courage, collapse into a single pulse. And then the reflection dissolves, its outline melting into yours like ink returning to water. You gasp, but it's not shock. It's release. The astronomer speaks from across the room, his voice now distant, as if from another world. Every star that fades is one less thought pretending to be you. Every light that remains is truth. You stand taller now, lighter, the quiet hum of the tower matching your own heartbeat. The world looks sharper, not because it's brighter, but because you are softer. You turn to him. What happens now? He gestures toward the door at the base of the stairwell. Now, he says, you go outside and see the sky without a lens. You hesitate. Will you come with me? He smiles, warm, amused, infinitely kind. I never leave the edge of the world. Someone has to keep the telescope listening. You walk toward the stair, each step steady, peaceful. The desert air greets you as you open the door, warm, full of new wind. When you look up, the night is impossibly vast. But this time you don't feel small beneath it. You feel infinite, as if every star knows your name and is whispering it in rhythm with your breath. Behind you, from somewhere deep within the tower, the astronomer's voice drifts through the wind. When you tire of noise, follow the quiet. When you tire of of searching, remember, the stars were never answers. They were invitations. You close your eyes. A slow smile forms. Then you whisper your final exhale, the one that lets the last thought go. And the sky, for a moment, breathes with you. The first light of dawn rises like a held breath finally released. The silver desert begins to change, faint gold bleeding into its edges, dunes softening from moonlight to morning. You stand at the base of the tower, the observatory behind you glowing faintly, as though the night hasn't quite left it. You turn once more to look up at it. The brass dome catches the sun, a single bright flare cutting through the lingering violet air. For a heartbeat, you think you see the astronomer leaning over the balcony rail, still, serene, hands folded behind his back. But when you blink, he's gone. Or perhaps he never was separate from you at all. You begin to walk, barefoot again. The sand feels warmer now, familiar, like a friend who has stopped keeping secrets. Each step makes a whispering sound, soft as the last words of a dream. The air carries the faint scent of the astronomer's tea, cardamom, orange, and something older, something like paper and time. You smile. The desert is different in daylight. Where last night there was emptiness, now there is texture, ridges, tiny stones, traces of wind. And there, in the distance, you notice something you didn't see before. A path. Faint, yes, but clear enough to follow. It winds between dunes and vanishes toward a horizon glowing with pale gold. You walk without hurry, letting your breath and your steps fall into the same rhythm. Somewhere behind you, a gust rolls over the dunes, a sound like a sigh from the sleeping world. You hear, in memory, the astronomer's voice, 3 releases each night. No heroics. The mind needs rest as much as relief. You smile, whisper the words aloud, and keep walking. After what feels like hours, you reach a low ridge, where the desert gives way to stone. There, set into the sand like the rib of a buried creature, stands an old brass instrument, half buried, weathered by time. You brush the sand away. It's a telescope, smaller, simpler, but unmistakably from the same maker's hand. Its lens cracked, its brass dulled to the colour of dusk. Beside it lies a parchment sealed with wax, the seal broken long ago, as if someone already read what was inside. You unroll it carefully. The writing is your own. If the noise has become too loud, come when the stars are awake. You feel the desert tilt beneath you, not with fear, but understanding. The letter you found on your pillow wasn't sent by the astronomer. It was sent by you. A message from a quieter future. For a moment, you don't move. You just let the realization settle, layer by layer. It doesn't feel shocking. It feels inevitable. Like remembering a song you've known since childhood. The observatory, the astronomer, the reflection. None of them were separate. They were stages of the same return. And the tower itself, perhaps it still stands somewhere beyond the map of waking life, waiting for another version of you to climb when the world becomes too loud again. You lift the cracked telescope, aim it toward the horizon. The glass, though broken, still gathers light. Through it, you see the sun rising, enormous, quiet, full of grace. Its warmth spills through the lens, painting your hands in gold. The astronomer's voice returns, a whisper threaded through the wind. The sky was never watching you. It was watching with you. You lower the telescope. The desert wind carries away the last of the night's chill. You stand there, utterly still, and realize something simple, something perfect. You are no longer searching for calm. You are calm. You start walking again, toward the horizon now glowing white gold, toward a day that doesn't demand anything but presence. Every few steps, the sand glimmers faintly behind you, as if the stars themselves have chosen to follow you home. At the very edge of the desert, just before the first trace of green appears, you stop and turn one last time. The observatory stands impossibly far away now, a slender silver thread against the blue of the new sky. You whisper into the wind, a final gift to the one who guided you there. Thank you for waiting for me. And faintly, impossibly, you hear your own voice answer from somewhere within the tower's echoing heart. Always. The morning light folds around you. Your body relaxes. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts grow soft. Not gone, but resting. Finally, the observatory fades behind the dunes, but its rhythm, The quiet, steady pulse of stillness remains inside you, beating in time with the world. You keep walking. The horizon opens, and the last thing you hear before everything becomes peace is the sound of your own footsteps, matching perfectly with the heartbeat of the universe.